Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to a San Diego Comic-Con rundown. I'm only doing audio only. I mean, that way I just don't have to keep up with a whole bunch of video files, but also you don't have to stare at my ugly mug, so I think it's kind of a win-win. Because also, like, I just figured it'd be easier to kind of get this out pretty soon on Monday, if possible, if I just do audio only. But regardless, putting all that aside, I'm going to be running down a lot of the stuff that came out, reveals, and whether it be like trailers or information that was revealed at this year's San Diego Comic-Con. And I will also let you know you can check out the time codes. I'm going to include everything that I'm covering and talking about. That way you can kind of jump around to what you want. It is Saturday Saturday afternoon at the time I'm recording this. There's some stuff that's still trickling out now, but obviously like it's going until like tomorrow. So there's going to be stuff then that I'm just going to have to figure out where to edit and include stuff because I know there's going to be Marvel and probably most likely DC stuff dropping tomorrow as well. But either way, I am not going to be covering everything that got revealed because, yes, maybe some stuff didn't appeal to me as much as other stuff does, but also, like, there's a lot of stuff and information getting dropped, so there's probably also going to be gaps in what I'm, what is kind of out there and what's known, but, you know, this is just some of the things I picked up. Like I said, when I'm recording this, there's still stuff coming out even now, so I just do know that, so, kind of let's jump right into this. First thing I'm going to talk about is the I Am Groot shorts, which I thought was kind of interesting. First and foremost, looks adorable, but I also, like, I constantly, like, remember and forget that that's a thing, and I wasn't really 100% sure what to really make of those shorts. Like, what my initial thought of, like, well, what is that going to be? I thought it was going to be kind of like some, like, almost kind of like the holiday special. I thought it'd be, like, on the ship and everything, and it's some Groot misadventures, but it seems like, no, he's in different places and going through different adventures. Specifically, they're saying it's 5 shorts. They're going to start dropping on August 10th, so I'm assuming, I don't think they're going to all drop at once. I think maybe every subsequent week there's going to be a new one. I don't know how that works, but they look adorable, and I thought that was kind of pretty neat. Especially with the one they kind of focused on was like him being almost like this god. It was almost like this Gulliver's Adventure type of aesthetic it had to it. Like he poops, like farts out a leaf and they're eating on it and they're praying to him like a god. So I'm like, oh, that seemed really neat. So it just seems adorable, and it's kind of nice to kind of get at least a better understanding. Like I said, I didn't really know what to really fully expect, but to be able to get this look at it, I thought was pretty neat. If you haven't seen it already, I should have also brought that up at the beginning. There is a trailer out for it if you might have missed that. So. Next up, we're going to continue on the Marvel animated front. I should have said that from the top, sorry. Next, we're going to move into some information and stuff we got for Spider-Man Freshman Year. This is the animated Disney Plus show. That was supposed to be like a prequel to Civil War. This is supposed to be like early days of Peter as Spider-Man. Well, before he was, before Civil War and everything. But obviously some of the information we got has contradicted what you might have thought before. It is still a prequel, but it heavily leans itself to be like, no, this isn't necessarily a prequel to the MCU Spider-Man. It's kind of like hints to like a multiverse thing. Like, yes, there's similarities, but it's ultimately going to be different. I think there's certain aspects of this series we could probably extrapolate and add context to some of Tom Holland's Peter Parker, but it seemed like its own thing, which I'm fine with that. Like, truth be told, there's been so many animated series, because I know there was Spectacular. I mean, I'm talking about more modern, because obviously I've watched a lot of Spider-Man cartoons growing up, but I'm like, Spectacular and then Ultimate. There was a Marvel Spider-Man show on Disney. I only watched like a couple episodes of it. I liked it. I just, I still also need to go back and finish Ultimate, because I got like a couple episodes into season 3. Putting that all aside, I apologize. Going into what we know about freshman year, Spider-Man freshman year, they showed off, first and foremost, the suit he has. It's obviously not a one-for-one for the one that he has in Civil War, that little bit in Civil War when Tony sees him kind of, slam into a bus, plus the one he kind of has for some of Homecoming at the end, that homemade suit. He has a different one. This one's got like the backpack and like It kind of actually reminds me of, it's not a one for one, but it kind of reminds me, if you've played or seen the Miles Morales Spider-Man game, it kind of reminds me a little aesthetically to some extent, like the training suit that Peter left Miles meets Miles' own suit meets Tom Holland's homemade suit. It's like a amalgamation of all that. It looked really interesting, like I said, with the backpack and everything. Because I think you get a peek at like his OG like homemade suit in the Marvel Spider-Man cartoon that I was just talking about that came out like a couple years ago. Like I said, I think it got more than one season, but like I said, I'm not remembering well. But aside from that, we're also going to get other suits. There's at least one I think I recognize because I know it's in the PS4. Well, I mean, just the the PlayStation Spider-Man game, PS4, PS5, that one. I think it's called the Future Foundation suit. It's the white suit with the black spider on it. I want to say that's what that is. People who are well more versed in the comics will know, like, oh, what those suits are. But yeah, I'm not well versed enough to really know the background and all of that. But some other details we got is that some of his friend groups are going to include Harry Osborn, which that was kind of the first, wait, what? And then also Nico from the Runaways. I was like, yo, that's cool. Once again, even if this ends up being a multiverse thing, it's kind of nice to be able to bring Nico into this. That's actually it makes you wonder, like, has she tapped into like her more magical side of things in this continuity yet? Or is it, just as Peter's coming into his own as Spider-Man, is she going to do the same thing as, so, because Doctor Strange, jumping ahead a little bit, is in this. So we definitely are going to he's going to make some appearance, so it is definitely going to lend itself on the more mystical side of things. So I thought that was actually pretty interesting. But really quickly back to the Harry thing. The reason why that immediately caught my attention is because also like Norman's apparently going to be in this, and he's going to be kind of a mentor to Harry. I mean to Peter. Now, to my recollection, I have not seen No Way Home since it came out in December of last year. To my recollection, Norman went looking for his family, like a Harry. Well, because Harry was still alive at that time, so of course he'd still be looking for Harry. But he said that there were no Osborns here, so implying like the Osborns either aren't the big name that they are in his universe, so they're here, but they're not someone you can find, or maybe they don't exist, whatever the case may be. So this kind of contradicted that. So you're like, that was kind of the first red flag of like, oh, this might not be the same continuity as freshman year, because we were kind of believed that it would be like an animated prequel to Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but it seems like that's not the case. So once again, it is leaned into the multiverse, and the multiverse has been established in this in the MCU, so it's not too out of the realm of possibility that it's not like, it might not be like canon to the Spider-Man we've been following, but it's the Spider-Man out there nonetheless. So. We also got some talks about some of the, well, at least showed off versions of the some of the villains we'll get, like Doc Ock, Scorpion, which once again kind of adds to the whole not canonical to the MCU on both fronts. But also there's also a whole bunch of villains. One of them looked like it was like the one to the. If I throw up the picture and if I can find it include in the video, or if you want to go track it down yourself, one of the villains to like the far right seemed like that was Tombstone, but I could be completely mistaken. So there was also news that Charlie Cox will be obviously reprising his role as Daredevil yet again, but even like in a voice role this time, because Daredevil is going to make an appearance in this. And the what we saw of Daredevil's suit, it seems like it was almost like a very different version, but it kind of lent itself more like the black suit that he had in the Netflix, seasons. Like he has it mainly in season 1 and in season 3. So it kind of reminded me of that, but just a little bit more, because I think it has like it's a lot more sleeker, because obviously the one he has is very like low grade, but this seemed a lot sleeker. So it seemed really interesting design, but it definitely reminded me of that suit. So I thought that was interesting. Next up, continuing the animated Marvel front, we have What If Season 2. Obviously, I'm trying to remember if there was, I think there was some stuff brought up. I'm thinking I might be thinking of Marvel Zombies, which we'll be covering next, I believe. But some of the stuff we got information-wise, apparently other characters going to pop up. Obviously, Hela, Iron Man, Captain Carter, Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, Doctor Strange, and I think that the line I was reading was saying like saving the multiverse one universe at a time or something like that. Obviously, some of those characters we've already gotten story-wise stuff with before, like Iron Man and Doctor Strange, but I think this is going to be them. Well, Doctor Strange has already been at the center of more than one, but I guess maybe this is going to be, because the only time we got with Tony was in episode 3, but he was like, him and a lot of the OG Avengers were brutally murdered. So, but the one that really caught my attention was like Hela, which I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder would they be able to get Cate Blanchett back, because like being able to get her more as Hela would be interesting. But obviously, I should also say there are spoilers here with some of the storylines and other characters that are going to pop up. So if you want to avoid like hearing anything else, I would kind of skip ahead. But some other appearances we're going to get are young Peter Parker. And now, I don't know, the way this was written, I don't know if that's implying we're getting a young Yondu, Korg, Thanos, the Grandmaster, Red Guardian, Ego, Shang-Chi, Bucky, Captain America, and Gamora. I don't know if we're getting, like, younger versions of them, or was that just, I think that might have just been applicable to, like, a younger Peter Parker, but I think it's saying, like, these other characters, like Yondu, Thanos, and Shang-Chi will all be, like, centerfold to some what if storylines, which is, I think it's really interesting, because my understanding is Thanos' story originally for Infinity War was going to be an origin story, which it kind of was to some extent, but I think maybe like what if we'll get to lean into that a little bit more, maybe not. I mean, obviously like Thanos made at least one major pop-in and 2 smaller pop-ins when it came to What If Season 1. So him kind of being the main focus of one is going to be interesting, because he was kind of the main one he was focused in was like, he was a part of the ensemble, you know, so that's definitely going to be interesting to see what those stories are about. I'm assuming the Gamora one is going to be the episode we didn't get from Season 1. I think that my understanding was it wasn't finished in time for the first season to come out, so they just pushed it. That's why we got that Gamora with the season finale, like that Gamora from a different universe that is like, oh, this is a story we don't know. I think it's related. I think it might be that Gamora. Not unless there's a different Gamora story, but I'm assuming it's that. Some of the storylines elements that came up were like like I said, a Hela-centric episode. Apparently, Odin versus the Mandarin. I'm like, how did that come about? What is that storyline about? Captain Carter meeting the Winter Soldier, which I can only assume that that's referencing maybe Steve Rogers being the Winter Soldier in this particular regard, because whatever, like what typically happens to him, obviously we saw that in What If Season 1 and the first episode, but also the ending of when Peggy goes back to her original universe, that she found Steve. But I think, you know, the complicated tragic love story element to it would be to repeat what happened between Steve and Bucky, and now it's happening between her and Steve, because Bucky didn't get, you know, turned like that to my recollection, but she found the Iron Man suit that he had, and it's like, right, so what happened to Steve? He must have, you know, gotten Winter Soldier. So what that looks like, the dynamic that ends up playing out, once again, this is all like, nothing was confirmed other than like the Captain Carter and Winter Soldier, at least from what I was reading at the time, not unless more information has come out, but that's just pure speculation on my part what that might be about. But another one, interesting enough, is like Tony on Sakaar with Valkyrie and Hulk. So instead of like what we got on Thor Ragnarok, we're getting like an Iron Man version of that. Now what that looks like is definitely going to be interesting, because I don't think those characters interacted at all. I mean, you know, obviously like Hulk and Tony have their, but I wonder like how Hulk, I mean, Tony will handle the Sakaar situation in comparison to Hulk. I mean, to Thor. That's going to definitely be interesting. But they also threw out that one of the episode scenarios is going to be like that 1602 Elizabethan, God, I cannot say that, era stuff. Apparently this is something in the comic books. I think I'd heard someone talk about it previously. I don't think, because I think it has to be earlier in the timeline, but because I know there was like a Marvel thing where they're set in the medieval ages. I don't think this technically counts. I think like the medieval ages was like way earlier in time. Do forgive me, like my historical knowledge is garbage at best. So, but I don't know if there's any relation there. But basically, this is like, hey, these are Marvel characters, but it's not like, oh, they got teleported to 1602. It's like, no, they exist just naturally in the time of 1602. That's my understanding of it. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Next up, continuing the animated Marvel's front, we have talks about Marvel Zombies. I don't know if it was made clear before that they were going to make that animated. I knew that was going to be a spin-off, but maybe I didn't know it was animated. That was probably public knowledge, and I just didn't know. But some really interesting information is apparently it's going to be rated mature, which is fascinating. Because obviously there's been talks about, like, so what is Disney going to do about some of these mature projects? Are they going to pull away from it? So on and so forth, right? So I think that's going to be interesting. We're continuing to go down that route, because for some people it's like, okay, so what does that mean for something like, oh, so will Daredevil be kind of like TV 14-ish, just like the other Disney Plus shows, or will they be able to keep it tone-wise like everything else? You know, questions like that. But apparently it's going to be bloodier and gorier. I mean, I'd assume because of the gorier aspect that it would include bloodier, but apparently this Marvel Zombie is going to be like very, 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 very gory. Because I know some people had massive issues with the Marvel Zombies. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I liked the whole like comedy horror thing that they were going for. They were like, oh, it was like Whiplash, but I'm like, tonal Whiplash, but I'm like, isn't that no different from any like other comedy zombie movie? That's why I'm just like, I don't know. Like, a lot of conversation have come up about things being tonal Whiplash that I can see, but I also am like, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I didn't have an issue with it where some people did, and it was kind of surprising me. Either way, there's also going to be, this will also include Phase 4 characters. I think this kind of correlates with What If as well, is that they had talked about the future of those being like, no, we were also going to include Phase 4 characters as well, so that's kind of interesting. Another interesting bit of information is that it is the same universe as, I think it's episode 5 of What If, is that same universe, so that's going to be interesting. Which also makes me wonder, no clarification on this, it's just speculation on my part. I am curious, are we going to get a conclusion to the Thanos story then? Because, you know, the episode ends with them heading to Wakanda, and lo and behold, who's there? Thanos with the gauntlet. So I'm wondering, is it going to be like a kind of almost soft reboot of that universe? Because how apparently, like, zombies work differently in this universe than they do in the comics, because in the comics they can talk, but they can't in this one. Not in at least in the What If episode. So people have wondered, is that something where the quantum virus is going to evolve to change that? Obviously, we know there some of the deaths that have already happened in that universe. The only ones left that we're aware of are Peter, Scott's only ahead, and T'Challa, which I am curious what they're going to do about that. And in that, what maybe they won't really touch on it at all. Maybe kind of like, oh, T'Challa kind of died off screen in this because of Chadwick. I don't know if they probably won't be any other stories with T'Challa because of that. Once again, this also comes down to like we'll know what they've done with T'Challa probably in general once we watch Wakanda Forever, because that'll probably give us an idea of how they'll probably handle T'Challa in other aspects of the MCU, whether it is like multiverse stuff or even just like animated wise, whether they'll really touch on that or not. We'll see. I think that'll kind of give us a better understanding of, like, even in a project like this, what that will look like and include. But yeah, I want to see some of the people we saw were like, I think in the picture were like, and the names that were written out, I think were like Shang-Chi. I know Miss Marvel was one of them. I want to say Shang-Chi's buddy, his friend, his bestie, Katie, who's played by Awkwafina. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But I'm excited to get more zombies, and like I said, curious to see if it is like a full-blown continuation, or are they going to like soft reboot it to some extent. It'd be interesting too, because if you follow different characters, like would it be a continuous? You'd assume it's a continuous storyline, or will they kind of make it like all set in the same universe, but an anthology where you follow different characters up to different things? I'd be so curious to see how they kind of structure that ultimately. Next up, some details and information came up about X-Men 97, this being the continuation from the animated X-Men series from the 90s. I'm going to talk only a little bit about this because I am not well versed in the X-Men. I remember watching it a little bit as a kid, but obviously my knowledge of the Marvel Universe is a little more extensive now than back then, because I was legitimately a kid when it came out, and I've not seen it since. If I'm not mistaken, like the entire original series is on Disney Plus, because I think Heroes Reforged, I know they are currently going through through and rewatching the entire show. I believe they're done with season 1. I think they're moving into season 2. But yeah, some information that came out I thought was kind of interesting. First and foremost, they're going to do the same art style. So the art style isn't going to be brought into like a more modern day. They're going to try and replicate it to keep the same, to kind of keep it, I guess, feel and vibe-wise very consistent with the original show, even to the point that I don't know if it's all of the voice cast, but at least a good chunk of the original voice cast is coming back too. So I thought that was kind of neat. And obviously I was watching some IGN videos where they were talking about, some of their questions about like, it wasn't like, I think it was like Fox or somebody, no, I think it was Saban had cut the budget. So like the 5th season was kind of weird. The 5th and final season was kind of weird. So the question then becomes like, are they going to not, are they not going to include that? Are they going to like make it so that like, that entire season didn't happen and they're going to kind of reboot it in that regard? Or is it going to be a full-blown continuation? Once again, I watched bits and pieces of it, but I don't think I ever watched the original show consistently enough to follow the entire storylines and through lines. I know picked up some stuff here and there, but not confidently enough to talk about anything, so that's why I'm just kind of leaving it at that. But the information was really interesting. I feel like I should take some time to like rewatch the show. I think now that I'm older, once again, and now I have even more knowledge of Marvel in general, I might have a better understanding of some of those storylines, or maybe they just might hit me a little different in general now that I'm an adult, so quite I'm curious to see how that plays out. Next up, we're moving into the DC section. Just today, at the time we were recording this, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, the first official trailer came out. I'll probably try and avoid watching the second trailer then, but if that's the case. But I really enjoyed what we saw. I really thoroughly enjoyed Shazam because I thought it was funny, but I also thought it was like very heartwarming, and it seems like they're leaning into that aspect even more. Obviously, the rest of his siblings gained the powers as well near the end of the last movie, but it seems like they're kind of all doing their own thing, and he's the one kind of trying to keep the family together, which I think is so interesting because for Billy, he went looking for his original family, his mom. He ended up finding her last movie, and now it's like these people, these siblings, his adopted parents became his real family, and it was all about that love, and all the family you were looking for was the family that was right in front of you the entire time, right? And so for him to be trying to keep his family together while they're all kind of split off doing their own thing, him trying to hold everything together, doing the whole superhero thing, and him saying like, he kind of feels like a failure. He's like, Aquaman's off being cool. There's already another red superhero, which I was like, at first I was like, Superman? I was like, no, that'd be blue with red. And he showed the Flash. I was like, okay, I'm not going to talk about it much. That's awkward as hell. You're like, you don't see Ezra's face, but obviously it's Ezra's Flash, and you're like, man, oh man, you can't not think about what does that mean. It's like, I'm surprised Warner Brothers wasn't like, oh, God, just don't include that scene in the trailer. Yeah, you don't see Ezra's face, but still, they probably are like, at the very least, because they want you to be like, yes, that all the heroes exist. He even references Batman, and they use specifically Ben Affleck's Batman to showcase that. So once again, that's a whole thing, but it just seemed like a nice, fun trailer, obviously showcasing Lucy Liu and Helen Mirren as the bad guys, and Jamon Hansu's character from the first movie returning. Because I can't remember what I thought his character disappear after he gave Billy the power. Maybe he didn't. I haven't watched the movie in a while, so I need to go back and rewatch that in preparation for the sequel. But just seeing them coming back, because it's like, right, the power of gods got given to these children, and it's like, yeah, it kind of made this personal. So it's like, I wonder, is that in relation to Billy and them specifically, or maybe stuff in the past in general of like gods not liking humans, specifically kids, getting all that power. So it just seemed like a wild ride. It seemed like it's going to continue to be that fun, heartfelt thing. We're going to get more monster aspects to it, just kind of like the deadly sins we got last movie. So it seems like they're summoning monsters specifically, like one of them is a dragon, which Billy's like, dude, I threw a bus at a dragon. I love my life. And it just seems so fun. I'm so excited for this movie to kind of get the full scope of everything, because I love their parents are like, where are you guys going? Go fight crime. And they're like, what? So I guess they're still keeping that a secret from their parents, maybe. But from what we just were able to see in the trailer, I thought it looked so good. I'm so excited. Because before now, we had only gotten like behind the scenes stuff back at DC Fandom last year. So to be able to kind of get more context and get once again get to see Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, that's so dope that they're the main antagonists. I love it. But yeah, I'm very, very pumped for Shazam! Fury of the God. This is a little side note, but I thought this was so interesting because I saw IGN, someone from IGN interviewing Paul Dano, obviously talking a little bit about the Riddler and stuff. But what I thought was so fascinating is apparently Paul Dano is doing a year one on Riddler. I think there probably already is one that exists in general, just like because I know like there's I know there's some year ones. I know there's like obviously the Batman year one's a big influence for like I know some parts of Gotham, some and some aspects of The Batman by Matt Reeves, but I also know that there was a year one Flash, so I don't know all the year ones that exist, but this is one that Paul Dano has an opportunity to write himself, and he's been working with an was it a Serbian artist, I believe. I'm not the comic book person, so I do apologize. But apparently he got the opportunity to do this, and it's going to be under the Black label. Like it's going to be apparently a 6-issue limited run. He kind of can do whatever he wants to, and it's kind of understanding, continuing that parallel between Batman and Edward, trying to understand like how their circumstances led them down the different paths that they did. Bruce becoming this Dark Knight vigilante, and Edward going down the path of becoming the Riddler, understanding those elements and understanding what made him what he is, and getting to the point of where he was in the movie. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing, and I thought that's pretty dope that Paul Dano himself actually gets to like write that, especially because it's like because the way he was talking about it is like, he's like, when he gets into character, he tries to like give those characters, every character he plays, a backstory of like, give them a history to kind of understand why they are where they are in the story that he's given. So to have that opportunity now to also be able to write the comic to kind of fill in those gaps as well, I think that's actually pretty dope. So I just thought that was kind of a neat little DC thing that I happened to come across. I thought was pretty dope. We also got our first trailer for Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves, which I thought was actually pretty dope. I have not seen the original Dungeons & Dragons movie in like forever. I did enjoy it. I know like a lot of people apparently didn't, but I wasn't really 100% sure what to think of this movie. Like in the sense of when details were coming out, because I think maybe information had came out, but to my knowledge, I thought people were still not sure what the movie was in the regard of, is it a movie where it's like, hey, kind of like, hey, we're playing a game and you're getting to see, like, we're bouncing between the real world where real people are playing the game and then their characters, or is it kind of like the original movie, it's just set in a fantasy universe? It seems like it's the latter. It's just set in a fantasy universe, but it just looked like a fun time, like action adventure, like fantasy. And it just looked fun, looked kind of charming, and just looked just enjoyable. And to me, that's all I would need from like a fantasy romp, you know? I'd actually completely forgot Michelle Rodriguez was going to be in this. I was like, Michelle Rodriguez. There's Chris Pine. I know there's Justice Smith. And also, oh God, is it Sophia Lills, or is it Sophie? Oh God, from on a short-lived I Am Not Okay With This adaptation on Netflix, the It movies. I think there was like a Hansel and Gretel movie she was in as well. That was more of a horror movie. But yeah, I had no idea she was in this too. But it's like, yeah, it seems fun. It's like, right. It almost seems like, if I had to compare it to anything, it also kind of reminded me of like Aladdin, where it's like, hey, you're a thief, you're kind of a street rat, and these are thieves who stole something for the wrong person, and now it's like, right, it's up to this. It's almost like got that leverage feel to it. It's like, hey, bad guys make the best good guys, and it's like, yeah, this ragtag team of misfits was, hey, I love me a ragtag team of misfits. If you don't know, that's why I love stuff like Doom Patrol, Umbrella Academy, the show Misfits, Legends of Tomorrow, so on and so forth, right? So that's why I can always get behind a team of misfits. So I mean, just in general, it just looked fun, and I'm excited to check it out when it comes out. We also got a teaser trailer for the Teen Wolf movie, which I am so excited about. I made a video a little while back when I heard about news of this happening. I was like, wait, what? Because there's always been rumors and speculations about more in the Teen Wolf universe, which I'm so pumped about. If you don't know, the Teen Wolf show that was on MTV previously, I love that show so much. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm so excited to be doing more. This movie is a sequel to the series finale. It's taking place like a couple years later. Obviously, Scott's out of high school. Like, him and the squad are out of high school. I guess this is them college years and stuff like that. How long? I don't know if it's real life time, because like the show ended in 2017. The movie, I don't know if it's going to actually have that real life 5-year time gap, or will they make it longer time gap. Either way, I'm excited for what we saw. Dude, all the familiar faces. That's all I needed to see. I think we saw Melina. We see oh God, Lydia, because I was like about to say Holland Roland, but I was like, that's her name. We see Derek, we see Peter, which I think is so interesting because Tyler Hoechlin and Ian Bohen obviously were just working together on Smallville, so I was like, hey, I love how that works out. We see Mason in a deputy's uniform, so I'm like, yo, does he work for Papa Stilitsky, like as one of his deputies? We see Parrish at one point in time. I don't know if we saw Liam in it or not. I'm assuming he's in this. Maybe we did. Like, I watched the trailer like once yesterday. So, either way, I was so pumped to see that. And I'm like, yo, it looks so good. I'm so excited to be back in this world. The enemies they were facing off at one point in time, God, it's been a while since I've seen any of, especially earlier Teen Wolf. It reminds me of season 3. You remember when Styles got possessed? I want to say, wasn't it the Nagitsune that ended up possessing him? I don't remember those ninja things. Was that like Kira's mom that sent those, or were those part of the Nagitsune? I don't remember. Like those shadowy ninja characters, they remind me of that. I don't know if there's any correlation there. But we have that. We see Papa Argent. Also, apparently, like, I forgot that there was supposed to, like, Crystal Reed was coming back. So, like, yeah, like, she's coming back as Allison. It's like, wait, she's back? What the hell is that about? Is she a zombie? Is this thing, like, bringing her back to do its bidding? Like, what's going on? Especially because it's been a long time since she's been dead. She died in season 3, so there's that time frame just in the confines of the show, but also you add in an extra time frame, too. I wonder what they're going to do about the whole Styles and Kira thing, because I know like Arden Cho just didn't come back because they weren't going to pay her enough. I think the same thing for Dylan O'Brien as well. Which, hey, you are worth, if they're not going to pay you what you believe you're worth, because I think she was going to get less than the rest of the cast or something like that too. You decide, once again, I said it then, not really knowing her full circumstances, anyone's full circumstances. Someone chooses not to do this, I'm bummed, but I also respect someone's decision. So she did what she was like, yo, I'm not getting paid the same as everyone else. Bump that, I'm not going to do it. So once again, I respect making that choice. So, but I'm curious how they're going to like say anything, because once again, the last time we saw Kira was in season 5, part 2, where she went off with the Skinwalkers and she couldn't come back and stuff. I'm sure once again they could have written around that. So I wonder if we'll get any update on that, anything with Styles, especially because him and Lydia were together. I hope it isn't a thing of, yeah, Lydia and Styles broke up. I was like, no, after everything, because Styles has been in love with Lydia. Like, wasn't it like he's been in love with her since they were kids? So, like, and they finally got together, so, like, I wouldn't want that to kind of get soured in any shape or form, you know? So, either way, I'm just excited. Once again, it was just a teaser trailer. There was a panel I haven't checked out, and I don't know, because I kind of don't want to know anything more than what we got in the teaser. I kind of don't even want to watch a full trailer when it comes out, because I want to go in knowing as little as possible. All I needed to do was see some familiar faces, see some red and blue eyes. That's all I needed to be like, yes, I am here. I'm all about it. Part of me is almost like, well, I can use this as an excuse to rewatch the entire show, because I haven't watched it in a while. Because I think I rewatched the show back before, like, maybe the first half, maybe second half of season 5 came out. Either way, I love the show a lot, so I'd love to be able to go through and rewatch it again before the movie ends up coming out. And kind of along the same lines, I know there was some casting news about the Wolfpack spinoff that's kind of a spinoff to this. I don't know if any other information came out. All I saw was, like, I know, like, Sarah Michelle Gellar was cast in it. Like I said, there might be other stuff out there, but that's, like, one piece of news I caught that I was like, oh, that's cool, that's dope. I was, like, curious. I was about to say, I'm like, well, I was wondering if she's gonna play, like, which I feel weird saying this, but I was like, oh, I was wondering if she's going to play like a mother role or something like, because it's based slightly on a book that has nothing to do with Teen Wolf, but they're kind of adapting it and making it part of Teen Wolf. Once again, this is my understanding from like information that came out like months ago. So I don't know if she's going. I don't know how much of the story, because I haven't read the book that it's based on. But from what I read of the book, I'm like, okay, I could definitely see like how they could end up applying that in this universe and making a story from it. But just in general, more Teen Wolf, more stuff in that universe. I'm super pumped and excited about. I'm curious, like how many, like especially when it comes to the Wolfpack spinoff, like what the world of the supernatural is going to look like. That, because I'd assume like if they were ever to do any more Teen Wolf, I was always assuming it was going to be a next generation type of thing, like Liam's generation of the Supernaturals and stuff. But you know, maybe we get more of that in the Wolfpack and stuff. Either way, because I'm assuming this movie is also going to tee up, kind of be a backdoor setup for the Wolfpack as well. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I have little references here and there. Maybe some characters from this will pop up. I'm just excited to be back in this world and this universe. So that's kind of all I really had to say currently. We also got some stuff related to The Walking Dead. First and foremost, I know there was like an official trailer for Tales of the Walking Dead. That being the anthology Walking Dead story. I'd seen a promo for it. I want to say while season 7 of Fear the Walking Dead was airing, I believe I saw a promo for that. But I've not watched the full trailer. Kind of don't want to. I just kind of want to go into that surprise. But I know, once again, it's an anthology series set in the universe. So I am curious about certain aspects of it, like, because we know it's been about, I mean, depending on where you are in the continuity, but basically it's been 10 plus years since like everything started. So where in that timeline are these stories going to take place? All over the timeline, very specific point in the universe. Like, are they all going to take a place around like, oh, this has been 10 years into this, all the stories are taking place around that time, or like I said, at different points in time. The trailer probably has answers to that, and these are more rhetorical questions. I kind of don't want an answer. These are just letting you know what's in my head, but so there was that. Obviously, there was a panel for the final season, well, the final episodes, because the 8 episodes are returning this fall. Maybe they might have dropped a date for that, but like last time I checked, it was just the fall that they were talking about that. But some really interesting information aside from all of that, you know, the cast getting together, you know, final time. Sadly, Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohen couldn't be there because they're all filming was it Isle of the Walking Dead? It's the spin-off, spoilers. I haven't talked about it in my reviews just because it you know, guarantees that they're going to be alive if you haven't, you know, caught up with the news. But it's like, yeah, they are getting their own spin-off and it's set in New York. So there's that. So they couldn't be there, but a lot of the cast got together. Obviously, like one of the last times that cast will really potentially be together like that. This is their final like Comic-Con and Hall H and all that. So I thought that is kind of like, you know, kind of like sad to think about, you know, it's like, right, kind of this like big send off, you know. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But also, the thing I was most intrigued by is there is going to be a Walking Dead, another spin-off called, well, I'm about to say called, we don't know the name, but it's potentially going to be a mini-series following Rick and Michonne. I was like, what? That's crazy, because we know, obviously, there were supposed to be Rick movies where Rick, like, after he left the show, like, after Andrew Lincoln left the show, like, early season 9, wasn't like episode 5 or something was his last episode, maybe, of season 9? Either way, there were going to be movies following Rick's story. I don't know, I think it was going to be, like, 2 or 3 movies. It might have been like a trilogy or something, but it seems like instead of doing movies, they're going to do like a 6-episode miniseries potentially. So that's interesting. Once again, maybe that information will change, but it's kind of supposed to be kind of closing Rick and Michonne's story. So I've never read the comic, but you know, you pick up stuff here and there, so I know some of the stuff that happened to Rick in the comics. So it seems like this is probably that stuff that, like, some of that stuff that happened to Rick, it's probably going to be happening. That happens in the comics is probably happening in this. I think I was watching the IGN video talking about this, and apparently information suggests that this should be out like this time next year or something like that is when that's supposed to be coming out. But because like the last time we saw Michonne was last season, was it episode 13? She was tracking down Rick, and she was around a whole bunch of other people helping them out. I'm curious because, well, the last time we saw Rick, he was with Jadis. We have subsequently seen Jadis and what she's been up to, being with the the CR, the Civic Republic. So is there going to be any like appearance from Jadis to kind of, because you know that's how she got the position she's in World Beyond, was because of offering Rick up, you know. So conclusions on that point, like what he's been up to, is he mixed up with the Republic in any shape or form? Did he get away from them? Like, how did that, you would assume, like, is he on the run from them? Like, will we have like deep ties in that regard? Because like The Walking Dead is kind of, has not really toed towards the Republic, because World Beyond's the one that's really leaned into it. Fear tackled it a little bit, mainly with Al's storyline, and now Rick's storyline, like him exiting, kind of exited that touch of that story too. So it's going to be interesting to see what that ends up entailing. And it's a mini series, and I'm like, probably not going to be a happy ending. So it's going to be interesting too how that correlates to and connects to The Walking Dead. You know, because obviously RJ's still around, and because Rick doesn't even know about RJ. I mean, at least from canonically speaking, we don't think he does. But he knows, because I think Michonne probably, because she showed like after Rick was already gone, because he got a couple months after, like I don't know, maybe he was already aware. I don't know if that came up, like, cause I think Michonne probably found out she was pregnant after Rick had already died, because the entire crew thinks he's dead. So I'm just curious. I wonder will that also be some setup in the series finale for The Walking Dead? Will they kind of tee up this miniseries or not? Either way, like, my point is that RJ's still out there, and so is Judith. So that's definitely going to be interesting to get the conclusions to those stories and see what that kind of ends up entailing and what that's all about. So I just thought that was really interesting info. And now moving on to The Sandman, which this is probably the thing I'm the most excited for next month. I've never read the comic, but I've heard nothing but great things about it. And the teaser was enough. I was already kind of always intrigued. The teaser made me go like, oh yeah, I'm super excited. The official trailer literally dropped like a couple minutes before I started recording this. So we've got our first look, more expansive, and just seeing how vast and like fantastical this is and wild it is. I now am a little more versed in understanding what the story of Dream. I mean, granted, the teaser kind of did a good enough job being like, yo, he got captured by a cult. He eventually got out, but by the time he goes back to his kingdom, the Dreaming, he ends up finding out it's in ruin, and that obviously I did not realize Kirby Hal Batiste. I always forget, is it Kirby Batiste Hal? I think it's Kirby Hal Batiste, I believe. I did not realize she was playing Death. I didn't even recognize that was her. I was like, wait, she's Death? That's sick. That's cool. Because she's one of Dream's siblings, and there's also another sibling of his that kind of Desire. That's who it is. I was like, because I know Desire's just like whatever they need to be at any point in time, which I'm like, ooh, I like that. Which also makes me think of like Lucifer, like in the TV show. Well, obviously we get Lucifer in this trailer as well, but just Lucifer's whole thing of, right, this is what it is that you desire. So it just kind of makes me think of that to some extent. But yeah, he's trying to gather. Specifically, I believe the character's name is the Corinthian. That was weird. I was like, the moment they showed it in like the comic form of like, oh yeah, this guy has teeth for eyes, and I'm like, what? Like where his eyes are little mouths, and I'm like, what? And they straight up adapted that. I'm like, what is that? Is definitely nightmare fuel, dude. This series seems so wild, and also interactions with Jenna Coleman as Joanne. Is it Joanne or Joanna Constantine? Which I thought they were like switching John Constantine into Joanna Constantine, but it seems like it is a character from the comics, but she's like from like way in the past. So some people had questioned like, right, is that supposed to be the character modern day? Did she manage to make herself immortal? Like I said, or is she just like because she's supposed to be an ancestor to John Constantine. So is Jenna Coleman going to be playing multiple characters? Is it just, or is she just playing like, no, like this is like the descendant instead of John Constantine, it's Joan Constantine as well. Either way, I don't care. It's Jenna freaking Coleman. I don't care. I don't need it really. I mean, I'm excited for the explanation, but still, like I said, And just like the whole thing of like, I love that line because it's very Constantine response of, well, you know, who needs, maybe the world's better off without dreams. Haven't had a good night's sleep in God knows how long. And even Lucifer being like, what good do dreams do? What dreams are there? In hell. And I'm like, oh, dude, this show looks so good. There's a being, the Corinthian, like I said, I think that's the character with the mouthed eyes. I think he's like, he's a serial killer, and he's causing all kinds of problems, and basically everything's kind of out of whack, and Dream is trying to put everything back into place, and it looks amazing. Like I said, it's legitimately the thing I'm probably the most excited for next month, and it's like, and it's only like a couple weeks away. So either way, just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. I'm sure there's like a lot from that trailer you could still pull from. People who are well versed in the comic are like, oh my god, there's that. Because there's also been a lot of talk about like, right, they're being faithful to the comic in other regards, but they're also making sure to kind of change it and modernize it. That it's not like a one-to-one, like straight out of every panel. It's like, no, they're going to modernize things. They're going to change things. Because I think that is the interesting thing. Kind of like, because I know at least with Invincible, how Robert Kirkman kind of talked about that a little bit more. Obviously, like how he kind of rearranged some of the stories and kind of, you know, moved some storylines up for the Invincible series compared to the comic. And it's just like, right, when you have like perspective and time difference and things have changed and maybe the way your mind works is a little different. So like you might go like, okay, I had this idea back then. Well, now that I'm older, wiser, even more time has passed. I've changed. The world has changed. My perspective's changed. Now I can add even more elements and change things to fit in a new direction or something like that. So I think that's kind of an interesting conversation that was had about this show, because a lot of the cast is saying that, right, there are things that are the same, but there's also things that have been adapted and changed to kind of be reworked in a new way. So either way, I am so excited. I am beaming. I'm so excited to finally see this series and kind of see, you know, get a taste at the very least of what this epic is. Because even this is just probably like a small fraction of just everything that goes down in this like very long running story. But either way. And now moving on to some more Marvel Studios news we got. First and foremost, we got another trailer for She-Hulk, obviously showing us a little bit more, we get a lot more between Bruce and Jennifer and a lot of their back and forth. We end up finding out, I wonder, is it going to be an overarching case or will it only be part of this season? The fact is that Jennifer is going to be representing Abomination. So it seems like that's her main, at least her first case, and because her boss is like building up like this whole like, oh, I got to represent like the superhumans and stuff like that, which I love her being like, that's conflict of interest. He tried to kill my cousin. Her boss is like, yeah, that's not a problem. She's like, oh, okay. And it seems like her blowing up in the media only happened because her going up against, was it Titania? Jamila Jamil's character, that whole fight in the courtroom, it seems like that got put on social media, and that's where her following kind of kicks off, and just kind of enjoying her life, trying to embrace that celebrity angle to it, because I feel like it hasn't happened too much, because the Avengers are celebrities, and obviously we know her cousin is the celebrity now, especially like we really got to really showcase that in Endgame now that he's Professor Hulk and everything, right? But like, Tony's the one that really kind of blew up the most as a celebrity, but it's something that we've seen peek in here and there. I want to say like Ragnarok, you got that moment where like people want to take pictures with Thor, so it's there, a little here and there. Obviously, Sam tried to, like, you know, it's like, oh, hey, are you? Yeah, it's me, it's Falcon, you know, so it comes up from time to time. So of course, you in this world where superheroes are treated like celebrities, like the moment you kind of hit that limelight, you know, you went from probably, I mean, who knows what Jennifer's life was before? Was she someone that was invisible? She just seemed like she kind of probably kept herself small, and now the irony is she's big and green, and you can't help but notice her. But yeah, I also like, because it seems, at least from what we get in the trailer, it does seem like she has come to the whole situation with being Hulk a lot faster than her cousin did, and I think that kind of annoys him a little bit, like how quickly she's jumping on top of all of this. But kind of stepping into the superhero role, not really something she was really kind of gunning for, but it kind of found its way to her. And it just seems fun and interesting, and also Wong comes to visit her about, I guess, with just everything that's going on in the world, which she's kind of like, okay, this is kind of a lot getting dropped on my lap all at once. It's like, oh yeah, like I read it from referencing some book, and I guess he's referencing a mystical book, and she's almost like, what are you talking about? But also our stinger at the end, which made me go, wait, what? Was we saw those little, it looked like that was Daredevil, it looked like that might be his OG like black suit from the Daredevil show, which we'll get to some Daredevil news later. But I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? I'm curious. Like, because there was talk about, like, hey, maybe Matt Murdock's in this, but it's like, he might be in this as Daredevil. But there's also been talks about potentially him being in an Echo show, plus, once again, maybe, like, what the future of Daredevil as a character. Once again, we'll get to that later on with the news. We'll go ahead and talk about it. There's a new Daredevil series that's coming out, so I'm like, it's going to definitely be interesting to see how some of that stuff plays out. But I was expecting Matt Murdock. To see him as Daredevil is really interesting. Especially because, obviously, I talked about it earlier, there's news about him, Charlie Cox voicing Daredevil in the Spider-Man freshman year, and obviously in that freshman year, it seems like it's his own thing, it's not MCU canon, but he has a very different outfit. I would assume just to connect it in people's minds, they probably give him a very similar outfit than the one he had in like the black suit in Netflix. I'd assume that's the one they're probably going to give him. It kind of looked like it just from the little bit we got, but I was like, that's a nice little stinger at the end there, so... In general, I'm very excited for it, like, full-blown comedy, courtroom, not even courtroom drama, maybe some drama elements, but just like a straight-up half-hour comedy. I think I heard it's supposed to be 10 episodes, which is going to be interesting, making it the longest of all the shows, so the Disney Plus show, so that's definitely going to be interesting, but I'm very excited. She-Hulk's a character I know nothing about, like, other than knowing, like, oh, she's his cousin. It does seem like they are doing the whole, like, fourth wall breaking thing, because he's like, right, if you want to just kind of leave this all behind, I'll kind of accept that. And she turns to the camera, no, he won't. And he turns and looks at her, and she's looking at him, but then turns back to the camera. I'm like, oh, because I know that's a part of her character is breaking the fourth wall. That's the one instance we've gotten of that at least in the trailer. So I am curious to see how much that is going to be a part of the show. And is that something she only did after becoming She-Hulk, or is that something she just did even when she was just regular Jennifer? I'm very excited. The show's like right around the corner. Like, we only got like 2 weeks or something like that. Well, more. It's actually 3 weeks. Roughly till She-Hulk. But I'm very excited to see what that's all about when it finally drops. Next up, we got a teaser trailer for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. A lot of people are assuming we'd get some kind of trailer, considering the movie comes out in November. And there was this legitimately kind of, watching the trailer twice now, it kind of got me choked up with just the music and the scenery. And you're like, okay, so it does seem like we are going in the direction of T'Challa died. Now, whether that has to deal with the Namor and Atlantis situation or not, unless it's unrelated, but it seems like his mom she's kind of like taking over the throne, and for her it's just like she's lost so much already. She lost her husband, now she's potentially lost her only son, and everyone dealing with it. We see Lupita's character kind of staring out, we see Shuri almost having like this broken like half smile. I think it's almost like it's probably this moment of like she's heartbroken, but she's probably trying to like keep her spirits up because she's thinking of like a funny moment between her and her brother, maybe. And we even see at one point, I think we see her kind of dap up with a character, and I'm assuming that's Riri, because she's supposed to be in this movie as well. But it's just a lot of like atmosphere and just like this, I don't know, like it's very like heavy on you, because the question for so long, it's the movie everyone's been wondering, what are they going to do? Because Marvel made it clear they weren't going to recast T'Challa, which I know everyone has some people who are about to recast T'Challa thing, which I've heard that perspective on things and understand where someone's coming from. I also understand where people from the other side are being like, no, don't. Like, I get where everyone was coming from, but it does seem like they are... And once again, I'm just curious about what the circumstances are, like how they handle that in movie. Obviously, this is just a teaser trailer, but, you know, and obviously this is just rhetorical questions. We'll get the answer when we actually get to the movie, but... like I said, it's just a lot of, it does seem like the main through line is going to be a war between Atlantis and Wakanda. Now, like, I wonder, is it a beef that's dated back? You know, it's just like, as one king is there, Namor's, like, who knows, did he recently take the throne? Has he had the throne for a while? Just when they're in transition where, Wakanda's in, like, you know, mourning. They just lost their previous king, and now they've suffered so much back to back. It's like, cool, we lost our previous king, then we got a new king, then there's the whole thing with Killmonger. Then we had everything Infinity War, so our king was going for like 5 years, and what that meant for Wakanda. Maybe we'll get some of that. It's finding out what happened to Wakanda during that blip, and maybe some of this Atlantis stuff will play into that. Because people always there was a reference of Okoye referenced some earthquakes happening off the coast of like Wakanda or something like that, and people immediately were like, "Oh my God, is that a reference to Namor? Is that like Atlantis and stuff?" And it turns out maybe it is, but maybe we get some of that filled in gaps of what happened in that time frame. Maybe in that time frame while T'Challa was gone, things like escalated. I don't know, because we do see at some point like there's a ship or something that's taken over by some soldiers, and we really don't know the ins and outs of all that's going on. Once again, a lot of stuff is out of context. There's that room that it looked like it was Shuri she was in, where she was there was like fire around. I was almost wondering if that was almost like that ancestral room, but it doesn't, because that's also the thing too. All the plants got burnt in Black Panther, if I remember correctly, because Killmonger wanted to make sure no one else could become king after him. So were they able to repopulate that? Is Shuri going to re-engineer those to try and bring back the Black Panther? You know, the plant that allowed you to, like, the supernatural powers, because we do see a Black Panther at the end. It's a different suit, but they made sure to keep it cryptic, because it's like, right, who is it? Is it Shuri? Which, you know, people who were comic book savvy have said, you know, obviously she takes up the mantle at some certain points in the comics. So is it her? I've even heard some people, I thought it was an interesting theory where someone said, like, maybe it's her and M'Baku, that basically they alternate between who, you know. But I think it's probably going to end up being Shuri, her kind of having to fill the role of not only first her replacing her father. Her father got replaced by her brother. Now she's got to step up and replace her brother, you know. And I'm curious, because they're not doing a recasting, I wonder, are they going to do anything with the whole thing of, like, well, we know that when Black Panther dies, they end up on the ancestral plane. I wonder, would they touch on that at all? Like, will they hint to, like, some scenes that we never get to see? Or, like, maybe one of the final shots of the movie could be Shuri going to the ancestral plane. We don't get to see him, but maybe in the distance she sees T'Challa, and that's like the movie cuts to black or something like that. Like, I think that would be a beautiful way to handle it. I don't know. I think this is going to be a real somber movie in certain regards, but it looks like some awesome action sequences we got, but it does seem like the heart of this is a war between these two civilizations, and what the end result ends up being, how things get resolved. Once again, who is the new Black Panther, how that all plays out. Like, because I definitely feel like we're probably... Because a lot of the other cast, I think, is really going to step up. In particular, like Angela Bassett as T'Challa and Shuri's mom. I think she's going to be the forefront of this, because as she has to be the queen, which I think is interesting in connection with the What If episode. Was it episode 7? I want to say 6 or 7. The one about Killmonger. Like, his mom really kind of stepped up in that episode. Like, she was literally not just out front, like just in the sake of like Wakanda. She was out there out front in the sake of battle and everything too. You know, she was out there in the front line. So either way, it looked dope, and I liked us finally getting our first look and getting a taste of what we can kind of expect from Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So thought that was pretty dope. Speaking of Black Panther, we should move into the next part of the conversation about some news that dropped. Do know this is just some stuff I picked up from like IGN and stuff. It's Saturday night, 10 o'clock at the time we're recording this. So this is just information that kind of trickled out to them that I'm kind of trickling out now, and I don't know how much of this will be changed by tomorrow, or what will be reconfirmed, or what would be like, no, that's not quite right. Whatever the case may be, but it's talking about the phases. Interestingly enough, Phase 4 is going to end with Wakanda Forever, which I didn't see that coming. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, it's like, wow, the end of Phase... I mean, because it's always like, it's never like a clear example of when the phases are going to end. Phase 1 ended with Avengers. Phase 2 ended with Ant-Man. Phase 3 ended with Far From Home. Not even Endgame, Far From Home, but makes sense Far From Home was an epilogue. But it's interesting because I don't think this is saying like, oh, Wakanda Forever is going to set up so much stuff. It's like, maybe there might be some stuff. There's been rumors about maybe there's going to be a Doctor Doom. We know Riri's in this and stuff like that. Like maybe this will kind of change a lot of landscape in certain aspects of the universe in the MCU, but I'm not trying to overhype it and be like, oh, I think it's going to be something big. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but like, it seems like this might be like it seems it's a big story just with everything that's going on, but I think it's just going to be a very like personal story in some regards, but this personal story is going to have massive continental like ramifications and stuff. But regardless, but I just thought that was interesting finding out that's going to be the end of Phase 4. I thought that was so interesting. So along with that, we got news about Phase 5, and it seems like Ant-Man and the Wasp, which will be the next movie after Black Panther Wakanda Forever, is the first movie is going to be Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which there was also talks of maybe MODOK is going to be in that, which that's definitely going to be interesting. But obviously it's like Secret Invasion, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Echo, Loki Season 2, which I was actually kind of surprised by, but at the same time, it's like, well, if you're getting Quantumania, it means... What's interesting, too, based on the picture they show for what the timeline is, I mean, I guess things could always change, but I think now Marvel's back in the swing, because, like, COVID really screwed them up, where, like, a lot of stuff did not get released in the order they originally planned for things, so, like, a lot of stuff ended up changing in Phase 4, but, yeah, so for Loki Season 2 to be happening, and I think it's like, obviously, this is like listing it on the timeline where it is after Quantumania, so obviously, the Kang stuff isn't going to be resolved then, if it's still going to be ever-present in Loki, and I wonder what the connections are going to be, what any through lines are going to be there, but obviously we have the Marvels, Blade, Ironheart, Agatha, and then we get the Daredevil series Born Again, which the guys at IGN were talking, and one of them had referenced that Born Again is basically loosely what they did with Season 3, so I'm wondering if it's more so like a titling, almost like Homecoming, like how the home names for Spider-Man is like, oh, Spider-Man's home. Like maybe it's kind of like that. It's like Daredevil's Born Again in the proper MCU and not just tangentially connected to the MCU. What I thought was so interesting is apparently it's going to be 18 episodes. I was like, wait, what? That's crazy. Like, either that's like, okay, that's like 2 9-episode seasons, or that's like 1 full season, which I'm like, well, we know their episodes can range depending on the show, because some of the shows have been like 30 to 40 minutes. Obviously, like, they specifically say that She-Hulk's going to be like a 30-minute show, basically. So I'm wondering, is the same thing going to be for Daredevil? Because once again, information that I picked, like, I'm hearing third hand, and this information, so, like, once again, stuff can be clarified and changed, but 18 episodes threw me for a loop. I was like, that's interesting, because, once again, that funny thing of, people didn't like it when those Netflix shows were, like, 13 episodes, because they felt like, oh, they were padded too much, and then complain about the Disney Plus shows are that they too short, which, I mean, I can understand those criticisms. Didn't bother me on either front, but once again, I don't always view things the same way people do in those regards. So, but 18 episodes kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, huh, that's interesting, because like the only like Marvel shows that have ever been that long was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That, I mean, obviously being in the 20s, well, except for like its later season. I want to say what season 6 and 7 were the only exceptions, because they were both 13 to my recollection. So I don't know, just thought that was an interesting detail. We're also getting, I guess this is the title for the next Captain America movie, Captain America New World Order. So maybe we're going to be dealing a little bit in the aftermath of kind of the blip stuff, but also like what was set up in Captain America, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Because we know, well, the next movie after it's going to be the Thunderbolt, so I wonder is there going to be any correlation there? Because you would assume maybe there's going to be some setup. Well, there's already been a lot of setup of like Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character, and also Yelena, U.S. Agent. I heard, obviously, there's rumors like obviously like Zemo is a part of the Thunderbolts in the comics, so him, there's even talks about maybe even Bucky might be a part of that, so maybe it's like a shift in the geopolitical landscape. Obviously, this is also going to be like the first time with like, obviously we dealt with it in the movie, but I mean the show, but like obviously there might still be fallout from, hey, America has the world and really has a black Captain America and what that looks like. But it sounds like that's definitely like a spy thriller, like a new world order is being reigned in, like someone is trying to, just like the Flag Smashers, like maybe someone else, it's like, so all it takes is someone to pave the way. So what they did paved the way to other extremists stepping up and trying to change the world. Once again, maybe this has to deal with like the blip and the return, and just like I said, a lot of geopolitical stuff. Maybe kind of be what that title might be hinting at, but we'll have to wait and see. And as I mentioned, the Thunderbolts. Obviously, that was something that was rumored fairly recently about that potentially being a movie in the works. So what that necessarily looks like, how they set that up, because I've heard talks about how it was set up in the comics. They presented themselves as heroes, but a lot of those people, well, some of those people, Yelena could easily do it, and, well, Walker's had his complicated history in the forefront, but with Julie Louis-Dreyfus's character, she could probably like clean a lot of those records up and everything. Because obviously this would also be picking up like with them with her at least post Hawkeye. She didn't kill him. Granted, she was hired to, I don't know if, like, Valentina is the character's name. I don't know if she cares that much. It's like, cool, this is what you're hired to do. You didn't do it. The client actually ended up going to jail. Eleanor, Kate's mom. So I'm like, I don't know. I mean, plus there's also like the whole thing of, because it's also like later, all this is later on after Echo 2, in which there's been talks about Matt Murdock's going to potentially be in that, and Wilson Fisk, which apparently he's also going to be in the Daredevil show. So there's going to just be, like, you're going to have to wait to see how everything trickles out, because I think that's going to influence so much. So it's too early to really say anything. Speaking of too early, we have all this stuff about Phase 5, but there's also Phase 6 news, because apparently Fantastic Four is going to be the beginning of Phase 6, but apparently somewhere in there's going to be two Avenger movies, Avengers: The Kang's Dynasty and Avengers: Secret Wars. So, and apparently talk is that they're supposed to be the Infinity War and Endgame of Phase 6. So that's really, really interesting. And apparently all these phases, 4, 5, and 6, are going to be known as the Multiverse Saga, just like 1, 2, and 3 was the Infinity Saga. So I just think that was very, very interesting news. To my knowledge, other than like some cast people coming out, talking about, especially like the Black Panther cast and, everything, from what they were what was said about the story that Ryan Coogler said about when they first premiered the trailer for Black Panther like 5 years ago, and him and that story he told about Chadwick like squeezing his shoulder. I was like, he's like, oh, I couldn't even move my arm. I was like, dude, that story. I'm like, that's a beautiful story to tell. I was like, I love that, So I thought that was kind of a beautiful story to hear about. But yeah, I just thought that was some really interesting information that I kind of wasn't. I think no one expected them to drop anything about Phase 6. I mean, most of the slate was clean except for the news of Fantastic Four being at the beginning. It does seem like they have everything set in stone. Once again, COVID moved so much other stuff around, but they're kind of going with the punches. But it seems like going forward, they have everything a little bit more locked in. But hey, things do change all the time, just because maybe it's something you don't want to go through. There's also the thing, because that was also the big thing too. It's like people figured that Marvel was going to drop some big news here at Comic-Con, but there's still D23 in September that they could drop even more, like maybe some Fantastic Four casting, maybe, because still unsure about the director now that John Watts ended up leaving the project. So either way, I just thought that was some very exciting news and some interesting developments. I'm really excited to see what Phase 5 looks like. I mean, I'm ready to kind of like see, I've really thoroughly enjoyed Phase 4. I know that it's been very hit and miss for a lot of people. More miss than hit, but, once again, to each their own. But I thoroughly enjoyed Phase 4. I'll also push back. I don't agree with the comments people have been like, oh, it just fit, which, yeah, maybe because once again, COVID messed up a lot of stuff of like, yeah, they had things planned out, but maybe the plan was always supposed to trickle stuff out. But I'm also like, I mean, yeah, Phase 1 all entered, like, was leading towards Thanos and Avengers, but I'm also like, yeah, but this is Phase 4. We're also rebooting things. So, like, everything's kind of starting from scratch, because I'm also like, it's no different from any comics. It's like, it's like, right, everything kind of seems so isolated until it all comes together. So that's why I'm like, I don't 100% agree with that criticism, but once again, that's just my perspective on it. But I'm excited to see what happens with Phase 5, because I feel like they are probably going to do a lot of wonky things. You have a Blade, and people are hoping like, right, okay, we got a little taste of horror in Multiverse of Madness. I know people who are horror fans are like, man, yes, there are elements of horror, but don't classify it as a horror movie. It had horror elements to it. Yeah, but it's like, maybe we'll get some of that in Blade, and maybe they'll start... I mean, obviously, some of the news we've gotten at Comic-Con seems like Disney and Marvel are willing to kind of step a little outside their territories, so of what their comfort zones that, I mean, I think... People have their criticism that everything kind of always feels the samesies and stuff like that, but I think they do try to do things differently. It might not always work for a lot of people, but, at least they try. I mean, it's either... I always feel like there's kind of like... There's always... I guess they haven't struck that perfect middle ground for a lot of people, but either way, I'm just going to stop rambling here. So, I think... this should be kind of everything that I'm going to cover. The reason why I'm saying that is because I was under the impression that the Hall H panel wasn't going to be until today, Sunday, when I'm recording this. But obviously it was yesterday, Saturday. So I'm like, okay, so I think all like the major stuff was kind of dealt with like over the past couple of days. But this is just some of the stuff that kind of jumped out to me. Once again, I know there's still a lot of stuff that ended up slipping past me information-wise. I'll probably do maybe a later roundup if there's anything else that kind of jump out to me that I end up, that ends up trickling out to me, like, oh, I missed this information, maybe stuff like that. Maybe I make a like companion piece to this or something like that, a follow-up of some sorts. But that's kind of, I think that's going to be kind of it for this video. So obviously, let me know your thoughts about just stuff that I brought up, but also, maybe there's something that came out that you're like, hey, you idiot, you forgot this information came out, you didn't talk about this. I know, once again, I'm sure there's a lot that I just forgot to talk about certain things, because I know there's certain things in trailers I forgot to talk about, or just like maybe there's some pertinent information that was dropped that maybe I missed because either I didn't hear about it just when I was recording things, or just in general, I must have once again just forgot to talk about. So just let me know what stood out to you about what trickled out at Comic-Con, whether you went, whether you're just getting information third hand like me because you're just seeing stuff dropped online and stuff. Just let me know your thoughts about everything. What are you most excited for and stuff like that. So, yeah. But I think, like I said, I think that's pretty much it. But till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.